Yes, adore you all of the time. I got to.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're back in War Thunder and update 1.75 has dropped, which means the French tech tree is here for the ground vehicles. Today we're going to be looking at the B1 BIS. It is at rank 2, battle rating 2.3 in the tree, and it is probably going to be the first heavy tank that you play. At 2.3, this thing is kind of interesting, to be quite honest, but if you look at the armor profile of it, you will find that the 60mm on the front is definitely a varying display of effective thickness. Here, you can see you can nearly get above 80mm. Over here, we're looking at 90, 127 here, about 60 on the flat bit where the driver actually sits, and then on the turret itself, 56mm, but once again, very well angled. So therefore, you have to find creative ways of killing the B1 BIS from the front, and generally that includes hitting this turret ring here, or just spamming heat at it with Panzer IVs. If we look at the side armor, once again it is quite meaty, with 55mm of effective thickness, and even on the booty, we have 50mm of effective thickness once again, making this not just a tough nut to crack from the front, but also a tank which is not exactly easily flanked by lesser machines which can just go after it. What is kind of interesting is you have this hole here, which as you can see isn't actually covered by any other armor. It may be covered by a piece behind it, but once again, there seems to be a hole here. So this is pretty much 15mm, maybe with a piece behind it. But the easiest place to pen is the door on the back of the turret, 40mm, and if you hit that, take it out, you'll kill the commander, who is, arming the gun on the top, and from there you can just pick it apart. When we look at the B1 BIS, it has two guns. One is mounted in the center of the vehicle, in the hull I suppose you would call it. It is a 75mm SA-35, and then you have a 47mm which is in the turret in the top, which is, it can move all the way around. With the 75mm you do have a little bit of horizontal turning, but it's not really a lot. Generally you're going to have to turn the whole tank in order to fire the gun. It's incredibly meaty, 307 horsepower, 3, and it shows, because the 75mm, even though you have to be able to turn it, turn the whole vehicle to, make minor adjustments, the traverse on this machine is actually pretty good, mainly down to the engine and the excess 0 to 10 kilometers. But overall, the other stuff to look at, the reload rate for the 47 is incredibly long, but a lot of these French tanks seem to struggle with this issue, and also it has 4 crew members, so shooting it in an area like this, where the armor is 60, or the turret ring generally won't kill a B1 BIS, but shooting it in that flat part generally will, taking out 3 crew, and maybe the loader at the back here. It is definitely a strong machine, and its armor, which does stand up as long as you don't fight a few key vehicles. But anyway, let's get into some more gameplay and talk about that a little bit more. If you want to look at the history of the B1 BIS, go back to my B1 TER video, where I talk about its history and preliminary thoughts on the vehicle. So one of the first things I generally think about when going into these reviews is whether a vehicle is a primary or a supportive vehicle. The way this works is a primary vehicle can go out into the battlefield at its BR or lower, be able to dominate the game and just smash face. Whereas a supportive vehicle, it needs elements around it in order to do well, but in order of supporting those elements, it is able to easily eke out a win. The B1 BIS kind of sits in the middle here. So, at its BR and lower, the primary vehicle idea does come out of the curtains and is able to be one of the forces that propels, is that the word? Pushes your team forward in winning the battle. But the supportive element is the fact that it needs more tanks around it in order to be not just the main focal point of the enemy's attack. Even though its armor is good at 2.3 if you are fighting at 2.3, there are still many vehicles that can penetrate you frontally. The Panzer IVs, with their heat, can do it quite easily, even though sometimes the heat seems a bit buggy and doesn't actually go through you. And also, there are many small caliber Russian tanks which pen you as if they're firing, APCR. There's also many tank destroyers, the Stugs with their heat, the Panzers, the Panzerjägers. Is it the Panzerjägers? I'll just check for you right now. Yes, the Panzerjäger 1 has an easy time penning you quite easily. Marders if you get up-tiered. So, even though its armor is pretty good for its BR, when you are up-tiered, the armor becomes pretty much useless, which is unfortunate, but, well, it seems to be the heavy tank way. When we look at its guns, the armor penetration on the 47mm is easily good enough to be able to attack the enemy and be able to penetrate the majority of vehicles you face. The only ones you're going to struggle against is stuff like T-50s, T-34s, and the like. But the way that you penetrate them, if you are struggling to pen them, is you shoot them where their gunner is in the gun mantlet, and hopefully it goes through with the 47. You do have 69mm of penetration on it, so you should be able to. The 75 I have found is just completely useless. 57mm of penetration just isn't good enough for 2.3 or even higher than 2.3. Basically, the way I've been using these guns is just forget that you have a 75mm, use your 47, and once a vehicle is crippled enough from your 47, you can swing your massive body around and smash him with the 75 to finish him off, and hopefully that penetrates. The APHG round, if it does penetrate, does a hell of a lot of damage to an enemy machine. But the issue is getting it on targets. You have to move your whole tank, and also you expose your armor to be flat. You have to be facing the vehicle straight away to be able to shoot the 75 with any accuracy. So that means that they get a nice shot at your turret ring, and if they can't shoot that, they get a nice shot at that driver's port, which pretty much means that you're going to be out a commander and a driver, so your gun's going to be down, and you're not going to be able to move. Because of that supportive nature I talked about before, if you don't have teammates around you and you decide to play that primary role, let's say you are at 2-3 and you want to push forward, you are very susceptible to get flanked. One of the things about these French vehicles that I've noticed is, first of all, they have quite a long reload rate, especially of their main gun. In this case, the 47mm, nearly 10 seconds to get that thing back up is not really good at all. And on top of that, the turret rotation speed is dire. 7.1 degrees per second means that if somebody gets around your flank, there is no way that you're going to be hitting them. Now, you might be saved by your arse armor, or your side armor, and in that case, you're able to turn and face the enemy and take them out. But sometimes, the enemy knows what they're doing, they'll smash your transmission, and then there's no way you can do anything and you're going to be pretty much dead. That is why you need other tanks around you for this case. Now, the only way to stop this happening if you're by yourself is just keep going forward, keep pushing the enemy. If you play that ultra-aggressive mode, you will die, but it will take the enemy a very long time to kill you. And therefore your team can get into positions, which means that you're going to win the battle even though you've sacrificed yourself. The fact that we have a 32-ton tank here, which can go at speed, which has good acceleration off the bat, means that you have a few more opportunities in your arsenal compared to other tanks such as the Matilda or the Nürburgring. however you say it, where you can go forward, you can push hard, and you can also get into and out of situations a lot faster than your counterparts. So, at least, you know, you've got that going, which is nice. Another thing to look at when we talk about realistic battles is the lineup that you can put around a vehicle. So, I'm going to disregard the B1 Ter, just because it is a bundle vehicle and I understand not everybody has it. So, we're going to talk about a normal tree, normal tree set of vehicles. Now, generally I go with 3 vehicles, 2 aircraft. I think that works very well, and that should be the setup of the majority of people. So, because you want that B1 BIS to be in a primary role, it has to be the top BR tank that you use. If you decide to run it with an SAU-40 or an M4A1, then you just end up with a vehicle which is just worse than pretty much every other vehicle that it can face on the battlefield. At 3.3, the B1 BIS is useless. At 3.0, it still is kind of useless, but at 2.3, it is not terrible. So at 2.3, you have to find vehicles to put around it. Now, I like running an AA, especially since the B1 BIS is a heavy tank. It costs a lot of spawn points, so therefore an AA is needed. Your only option is the P4T AA, which is a really it's a really good AA for what it is, with the 413.2mm. So that's a nice little addition. It's not going to really do anything in the battle, but, you know, at least it's there if you die very early on. The issue is when it comes to the secondary vehicle that you want to run. Now, you have pretty much 2 choices here. You have the AMC 35 ACG1 and the S35. Now, both of them have their issues. The S35, its turret rotation speed is diabolical, its reload rate is terrible, and it doesn't have the armor of the B1 BIS, so therefore, to compensate for that turret rotation speed and reload rate, you can't bounce shots with the S35, so you just end up dying if you miss the first shot. The AMC has a good gun on it, good penetration, it has a really good reload rate, really good gun depression, it also has the new scouting mechanics because it's a light tank. The issue is its speed. It's an incredibly slow vehicle. I don't know whether it's a bug or whether it's supposed to be like this, but the AMC just takes so long to get up to speed, making it a very, very bad light tank. But I suppose if you want to put it in your lineup, if you're worried about dying early in the B1 BIS after maybe 1 or 2 kills and a base capture, then you chuck in the AMC 35. So as you can see here, you have to do well in your B1 BIS in order to justify this lineup. The AMC 35 is not a world killer. The P4T AA is great at an AA job, but that's about it. And let's say you change the P4T for a medium tank, the S35. Well, you already know my thoughts on the S35, it's not very good. So your main focal point is the B1 BIS, and it's pretty much the only focal point you have at 2.3. So yeah, that is definitely an issue. If we look at the aircraft, the NC223.3 is fun to just nuke a whole town. So that gets a nod for being in the lineup. And the MS-410 is a competent fighter, but it will get outdone by the majority of German and Russian planes that you will see in the air. If you can make that Hispano work well, and to be able to defend your teammates on the ground, then you can do your job in it. That doesn't mean that it's a good fighter, it means that it is okay at what it does. So yeah, the lineup around the B1 BIS is not great. It is pretty circumspect, in my opinion. I mean, compare it to 3.3 or 3.7. So at 3.3 you have the M4A1, the AMX13, FL11, and then you can throw in the CCKW353AA if you want an AA. If you want to go to 3.7, M10 GMC, N4A1, AMX13 FL11, or CCKW353AA. Doesn't that sound like an amazing lineup? Compared to B1 BIS, AMC 35, P4T AA. It really is just a much better lineup in my opinion, so that is something that the B1 BIS really suffers from. This idea that it doesn't have a decent amount of vehicles that you can put around it. And this means that this BR, you run into a lot of B1 BISs and a lot of B1 TERs right now, because there is nothing else which is good at supporting it. A B1 BIS is very good at supporting a B1 BIS, a B1 TER is even better than a B1 BIS at supporting, so therefore in that way, that's why you're seeing a lot of them, and also just because there's nothing else around this BR that really is as good as these tanks in a primary and or supportive role. So the versatility from a tactical point of view of the B1 BIS is incredibly good. The versatility of how your playstyle of it though, when you actually get into a battle, is not really that good. Basically, you're trying to angle your hull at a decent angle so you don't get penned through it by heat or by some of the I don't know what you'd call them, but pretty much the 45mm and some of the 76s that you see from the Russians, and then you use your turret as the place to get shots off at the enemies, trying to penetrate them, doing a little bit of damage over again and over again, killing 1 or 2 crew, and then just hoping that eventually after 3 or 4 shots you kill them. Then you push forward, then you attack the enemy. You know, there's not much versatility in the actual playstyle of the vehicle. It all really depends on that initial spawn and how many people you can see who could generally support you around the area. But I have talked about its speed. Its speed is really good for the size and shape of this tank, not just because of the traverse speed. The traverse speed is good, especially if you have like 2 or 5 kilometers under your belt. Means that you can swing the whole chassis incredibly quickly. But also the acceleration from 0 to 20 means that getting out of a situation that you've been able to get yourself into, or trying to get a burst of speed going towards a point, or maybe trying to catch somebody out, generally people won't think that you can do it, because you're in a B1 BIS. Generally you would see this from a Panzer III or a Sherman. But no, the B1 BIS is perfectly capable of doing something that can surprise the enemy in this way. Now, hopefully, moving forward, the B1 BIS does get something around its BR which will be a good secondary tank to it, but with the way that the French tech tree is looking, I don't think that will be the case. So even though this is going to be your primary vehicle at 2-3, just remember, you're going to have to make it count, because your backups to this vehicle are not great, apart from the NC223. The rest are mediocre at best, and, well, some of the worst at the worst. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.